we've just been reveling in Jesus. And that's who we should be reveling in. That's who we should be talking about. We shouldn't be talking about doctrine or though, like the video said, that all of that's important because everything is all doctrine is wrapped up into Him. All theology is wrapped up into Him. Everything from the Old to the New Testament is wrapped up into Him. One single person, and that is Jesus Christ, has made all of the difference that this world longs for. And Jesus is what has made a difference in my life, and it's who has made a difference in your life, I am certain. So remember that when you get confused, when you get anxious about anything, just remember Jesus. It's really, really easy. It's just that easy. Jesus, that's who you need to remember. So this morning I'm talking about everything that we do should be for Jesus. A mother and her young daughter had been driving on the highway for a couple hours of traffic had been difficult. In fact, some of the other drivers had been downright frustrating. They wouldn't use their turn signals. She had been cut off. She had been tailgated. And there had been cars in front of her who insisted on moving way below the speed limit. You ever had that happen to you? Yeah, me too. Have you ever, and the day wore on. Her patience ran out, and she began to speak her frustration out loud, and she began to talk about the level of intelligence of other drivers. They were ignorant, jerks, stupid. Have you ever done that? Come on, you're Christians. After a while, she tamed down and got control of herself. And in the quietness that followed, her young daughter looked up innocently at her and asked, "Mother, have you ever been stupid? Have you ever been behind the wheel of a car and been stupid?" Yeah, me too. There is a story told of a gal that acted out of ignorance. That story is told, and we know it as Martha and Mary. And as Jesus came, the disciples continued on their way to Jerusalem. They came to a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. Her sister Mary sat at the Lord's feet, listening to what he taught. But Martha was distracted by the big dinner she was preparing, and she came to Jesus and said, "Lord, doesn't it seem unfair to you that my sister just sits here while I do all the work? Tell her to come and help me." But the Lord said to her, "Dear Martha, you are worried and upset over all the details. There is only one thing worth being concerned about. Mary has discovered it, and it will not be taken away from her." We read the story of a woman who acted foolishly. Her name was Martha, and she had started out to be foolish, and she actually had been trying to be very gracious to help the Lord Jesus and his disciples. They had stopped by Martha's village, and she invited him into her home for rest and relaxation and began to prepare a meal. She hadn't expected them, and nothing was prepared for such a large group. I remember when we lived in Florida. Now, we need to pray for Florida this morning. We really do. We lived down there, and we had more company than what we really needed. I remember one time a friend I hadn't heard from in 10 years. In fact, I still tease her about it to this day. Hadn't heard from her in 10 years, and she called me. She was my best friend while I was growing up. And so she called, and not me, but she acted like she had called my wife for a recipe. And by the time the phone call was done, they were coming down for a 2-week visit to stay with us, all over a recipe. And I tease her about that to this day. But Martha couldn't go down to another restaurant and get anything to order in. She couldn't do any of that. She couldn't go to the grocery store. Nothing had been pre-cooked. And so everything that she had to be made from scratch. But she did this gladly because Jesus and his men were in town, and she loved Jesus. While she prepared the meal, Jesus sat down in the next room, and there was a problem because her sister, Mary, she just sits down there at the feet of Jesus and listens to Jesus, rather. And listen what it says. It tells of another time that Jesus came to their house, and it says Mary took a pound of very costly ointment and anointed the feet and wiped the feet of Jesus with her hair. You see, Jesus is Mary's hero. Mary worships the ground that Jesus walks on. And so here in her house, he's teaching, and this is great. Mary doesn't get much of a chance to listen to Jesus, but now he is, and so she's excited just to sit right down at the feet of Jesus and listen to him. And she forgets all about Martha and the meal and the setting the table and the people that are there, but because Jesus is there, and somehow when Jesus is around, you forget about other things. Well, now Martha doesn't share, though, in Mary's enthusiasm over this whole deal. As a matter of fact, I can see in my mind's eye, because this is played out in many a household, not mine, of course, but others. Mind's eye, as it all plays out, little by little, Martha gets upset. She starts by making little noises in the kitchen by expressing her displeasure of what's going on. Can you hear in the whole scene? Put yourself in this scene. Can you hear in the background the heavy sighs of Martha? Oh my goodness. And can you hear as the pots and pans start clanging around, they start to get a little bit more and a little bit more intense, and then a few of the utensils into the wash bucket as she's working around the kitchen. She glances into the other room. Can you imagine the glance that Mary got from Martha as she's working? And can you imagine what the glance is like? The glance, I remember, and I think many of you know and understand, and many of you who have children, they understand this from you. Can you remember when your dad gave you the skunk eye? Huh? And you knew that when you got away from that situation, you were dead. You were going to die. I can remember that look that I would give my girls, and to this day, I'm kind of embarrassed, really. Like I'm some kind of all-powerful God that looks down on them and can give them the eye. Can shut up, like my dog. Do that to my dog. I can just snap my fingers and my dog will lay down. Lay down. Do that to my wife. She doesn't do anything. Martha starts getting mad until she can hardly see straight. I mean, she is livid by this point. So she walks right into the middle of the room with all of the disciples, and Jesus is teaching, and Mary's right there. And she said, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me." In other words, she tattles on her. Now, this is wrong on so many levels. This is unbelievable on so many levels because it's hard to know where to start. First of all, Martha has lost her temper. Secondly, she's pitched a fit in front of the room in front of all her guests. That's not good to do either. Third, worst of all, she's forgotten who's in her house. I've never had a president or any kind of dignitary in my house. The best I got was a district superintendent who came to my house the very first time, my very first Sunday that I preached. It's quite a story, and I really need to tell you this. So we've been telling Sarah. Sarah, of course, is our most spirited and lively one, and always has been. And we've been telling her that Dr. Spear was coming. Dr. Spear was coming, and he was going to have dinner with us. And so she thought that was great and thought it was wonderful. And so finally, she was only about 2.5 or 3, I guess, maybe 3. And so she literally thought he was like a medical doctor, and so she like she did, just kind of got through the meal, and then all of a sudden she left, and we wondered where she was. And now this is my first time, my first service at my first church, 29 years ago, and here I was to make a good impression on my district superintendent. My 3-year-old daughter then all of a sudden comes out, and she is stark naked, not a thing on. And we said, "Sarah, what are you doing?" And she said, "I'm here for the doctor to check me." That catapulted my career immediately. But she's gotten so upset about her agenda and the way it was that she treats Jesus like he's a servant. Now, at this point, Jesus is faced with one angry woman. And I want you to notice how he handles her. He's classic. I love the way he handles her. He said, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and upset about many things, but only one thing is needed. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her." Now, some folks have believed that Jesus was implying that Martha's work in the kitchen was somehow not a good thing. That Martha should have been sitting down beside Mary instead and working in the kitchen, but that's not what was happening here. Notice, did Jesus ever tell Martha that she was wrong for working in the kitchen? No, he didn't tell her that. Did he rebuke her for not being in the room listening to him? No, he didn't do that either. In fact, the next time we read about Jesus coming to her home, she's doing exactly the same thing. In John, it tells us that 6 days before the Passover, Jesus arrived at Bethany. Here at a dinner was given in Jesus' honor. And guess what it says about Martha? Martha served. You can get this woman out of the kitchen, but that's what she's good at. She wasn't good at preaching or teaching the gospel. She wasn't good at one-on-one evangelism. She wasn't good at any of those kinds of things. She was good at one thing, and that was serving people. And so that's what she did. Why else do you think Jesus shows up there so often to eat? See, I used to have this gal, and again, the first church we pastored, her name was Sadie Dondero, and Sadie she was Italian and made the most unbelievable food. And it was always Italian and always more than you could eat. And she would make these baked raviolis, and she would make ziti and all of this kind of. And I didn't know I was Italian, but all of a sudden I became Italian. And so every Tuesday she would call me, and she would call me and say, "Pasta." She was from New York. "Pasta, you're going to come over for some pasta, aren't you, at 11:30? And I'd say, "Sure, Sadie, I'll be there at 11:30. And boy, you better be there at 11:30. And she would make the best food imaginable, and I was just stuffed to the gills every single time. And then at the very end, I found out that you don't ever say, "No, I'm full," because that means another helping is coming to your plate, and you better eat it. And so she would say to me, "Do you want more?" And I would say, "No, I'm full." And she would pile more on, and I would eat that. And so finally, she would think to herself that, well, maybe if she poked a pin in me, I would have blown up, and I probably would have. But you see, this was Martha's gift. This was Sadie's gift. It was what she was good at, and I was just happy to accommodate her gift. And I imagine Jesus is happy when he accommodates our gifts, don't you think? For example, if you have the gift to teach or to preach or whatever it might be, don't you think that Jesus is happy to accommodate and to anoint and to bless that type of ministry. Don't you think that that makes Jesus happy? Don't you think it makes Jesus happy that if you have the gift of serving or the gift of helps, that it makes Jesus happy to be able to empower you with that kind of gift? I believe that that makes Jesus happy. And so I don't think Jesus necessarily is down on any of the gifts or think that Mary was some kind of superhero. But I also believe that Martha was using her gift. When Jesus could have come to her house, and it's not like Martha couldn't have heard it. Why, he had preached to thousands, and the rooms weren't very big. It's not like they had 12,000 square foot in the house, and it was on one side, not the other, and that they were separated. The rooms weren't very big, and so Martha could have heard what Jesus was saying, but she was a little bit preoccupied in the fact that she's pretty ticked at Mary. And when Jesus came to her house, she could have prepared the meal and listened to him, but she wasn't. Why wasn't she listening? Because in verse 40 it says Martha was distracted. What's distracting her? What is it that honestly, if we take a look at it, what is distracting her? It's Mary. Mary's not doing what Martha thinks she should. Now, was Mary a lazy girl? No, absolutely not, because if she were, Jesus would have rebuked her. He would have ordered her into the kitchen. And apparently Mary did her share around the house. And most of the time, it's just this time she wanted to be in the same room with Jesus. She wanted to sit at his feet and learn. So the problem really isn't Mary. The problem is Martha. As I studied the story, I got a little confused, and I thought to myself, Martha was being the servant, and she was doing ministry, and she was meeting the needs of Jesus and his disciples, and I thought that what they were supposed to be doing. Isn't that what we're supposed to do? Aren't we supposed to be busy about doing ministry? In any way that God has gifted us, whether it's in painting or whether it doesn't really matter what it is that God has gifted us in. Whether it's making nature trails in the back, it really doesn't matter. But what does matter is that we do the work of the ministry. And you can tell that something was wrong here because Martha got angry. In James, it says this, the wrath of man does not produce the righteousness of God. So allow me to let you in on a secret here, and this is a secret. Now listen to me here at this point. If you're angry with someone, they're not the problem. You are. I'm not sure you heard that. If you're angry with someone, if you're mad at someone, they're probably not the problem. You're probably the problem. It's how you handle the situation. It's what you do with it. Like I've said often enough times here, that conflict is the price we pay for the deepening of a relationship. And through every conflict that we have, the outcome should be that our relationship is deepened by the conflict that has occurred. And we have come to, maybe not to an agreement, but to a point where we can handle that one to another. Right? When you find yourself getting mad at someone, you're the one with the problem. Now notice how Jesus deals with her. He says, Martha, Martha, you are worried and upset about many things, but only one thing is needed. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. Notice how gentle he is with her. He's not belittling her ministry. He's not questioning her love for him. He says her name twice, Martha, Martha. It's almost like he's saying, you're okay. You've done good things, and I appreciate it. But Martha, you forgot something. You forgot to put me at the very center of your life, and you forgot to put me first in your life. It's about me. You forgot that, Martha. It isn't about yourself. It's about Jesus. When you do the ministry in the church, you've got to handle it the same way. Let me say this as gently as I possibly can. When you do the ministry of the church, it belongs to Jesus. Let me say that again. When you do the ministry of the church, it belongs to Jesus. I jotted down a few things here. When Joey does youth ministry, who's the boss? Jesus. You would think I am. But I'm not. He's out of control. I can't handle him. We may pay his salary. We may do all of those things, but remember, he is not a hireling. He works for one single person, and that is Jesus. Sarah does the children's ministry. As a matter of fact, she takes over full time next week. We ought to clap for that. She's needing your help, so sign up today if you possibly could. I believe this, and I'm going to stand on this, and you're going to get upset with me. If you've got a kid, if you've got a child, if you've got a child in the children's ministry, I believe that you should help in children's ministry. In fact, if you've got a grandson or a granddaughter in there, you should be helping in there. How do you like that? So, none of us are exempt. Okay? None of us. I want to tell you what a huge job that is. My wife has been driving me crazy. Now, my wife works at IWU. She has worked there, and she has a full-time job. But I'm telling you that today, that I'm telling you that that is a huge, huge undertaking for anybody in their job to do that. And in order for Sarah to do it correctly and right, then we're going to have to help her. We're going to have to. So whether you think you've retired, I always got amazed at that. When I was pastoring down in Florida, I always got amazed at that. And one of the phrases that I loved so much was, you know, we used to do that up north, but we retired. And I'm thinking you can never retire from ministry. Never. Now, I might live to regret those words in a few years. But really, board members, and here's a shameless plug for the board meeting on Tuesday. Who does the board work for? Not me. They work for Jesus. How about the teachers, the sound crew, the media team, the praise team, the recovery group, evangelism ministry? Who's my boss? The DS? No. You would think so, but no. It's Jesus. And I want to tell you that having Jesus as a boss is far more, I don't want to say demanding because that sounds so harsh, but it's far more, what's my word here that I want to use? Levon, help me here. It's far more encompassing. It's far more, it's a greater privilege to be working for Jesus than any kind of a man. You can usually tell when somebody forgets that. They get upset. They don't feel appreciated. They don't agree with a decision. They don't believe the church is doing something right. One pastor said this: I knew of a church once where there were 3 or 4 very talented piano players in the congregation. We have that, 3 or 4. And they've got really bent out of shape when they didn't get their fair share of playing time in worship. Why were they upset? They were upset because their ministry at the piano didn't belong to Jesus. It belonged to them. They were Martha's. And when it becomes your ministry, your thing, your job, yours, you own it, it's all about you, then I want to tell you that probably, that you're serving only out of selfish reasons. Now, I have rarely seen it happen here. Why that is, why it's a great place to minister, because everybody seems to have a merry attitude. All you seem to be here is to worship Jesus, to sit at his feet and worship him. I want to tell you this: there is no turf here. None. There's no turf. You don't own it. You didn't buy it. You didn't buy into it. You didn't put a plaque. None of that. You didn't do anything to deserve it. Nobody is concerned about being pushed out of their ministry because so many of you are merry kind of folks. But that said, none of us are immune to Martha moments. None of us are immune to forgetting that the church isn't about us, it's about Jesus. And every once in a while, even the best can sometimes get a little bit upset. I'm going to close with this. I recently heard about a problem another church had. One of the members came up with a great idea for outreach, and the church had done this project year after year with pretty good results. But then one year, the leadership decided to try something else. They decided to substitute a new program for the old one that this man had initiated for them, and he was not happy. In fact, he got so upset that he shared his anger with several members of the church. Now, that's a pretty normal type of thing that I've seen down through 29 years of ministry, that people don't come to the people that matter. They go to people that don't matter that can't do a thing about it. What does that do? For example, if I'm mad at Larry, what does it do if I go to Levon and tell him, I'm ticked off at Larry? What's Levon going to do? Chew Larry out? She's not going to do that. You'll chew me out. So this guy, he gets upset, and so he shares it with somebody else. One of the things a phrase that we've become so accustomed with is, misery does love company, doesn't it? If you want to have a pity party, it's amazing to me that you send out a lot of invites, but a lot of people don't come to that. And so, in fact, he got so upset that he shared anger with several members of the church. He told them how stupid the leadership was for abandoning his dream. And he proceeded to say some fairly unkind things about leadership there. He had a Martha moment. He felt the leaders didn't share his vision. They didn't appreciate his ministry, and so he got so mad he flew off the handle, and he could have damaged the church, but fortunately, just in time, he had come to Jesus moment. It was almost like Jesus took him aside and said, you're troubled about many things, but you've missed the most important thing, honoring me. He had gotten upset because he thought his dream, his vision, his ministry was all about him. He had forgotten that when you're a Christian, everything we do must be all about Jesus. And when that man realized what he had done, how he'd embarrassed his Savior, he went to the preacher. Now everyone should do this. He went to the preacher and he humbled himself and asked forgiveness. And he spent several hours on the phone apologizing to folks for what he had done. 1984, I decided that God was calling us into the ministry, and so we packed up our bags and moved from Flint, Michigan, out to Colorado Springs. I was a supervisor of the bank. I had worked myself up into that position, and so I was a supervisor over 29 people, and I thought that when I left, surely the bank would not be able to succeed. I went back a year later, and lo and behold, they were running just fine. They were doing just good. I said, so what's your delinquency here now? Because I was over the collection department, and they spurted out a number, and I thought, holy cow, that's better than when I was here. And they were doing all right. So I took my first assignment in Lehigh Acres, and I thought to myself, you know what? When I leave, this church will go downhill. And guess what? Last I checked, still going. So then I came here and thought to myself, well, when I left here, it would fall apart. And, well, I don't know, but we changed our name and we did all of that kind of thing, and there's still a group of us that are around, and God is still blessed and God is still moved. And so when I left South Portland, I thought, oh, this church has got problems. I mean, they had problems, and and I thought, you know what? it'll probably go down. But the last I checked, they still are still going on. Still got money in the bank, just like they always did. Still doing okay. You see, my point is simply this. We will never, never, never have ministry that is so centered around a single person, and should not have ministry centered around one single person, that if that single person leaves, then we're sunk. That would be called a cult. You remember what happened in Jonestown and others, that Haley Bop's Comet and all that kind of nonsense. You see, it was all centered around one single leader, and that doesn't help at all. You see, but our job within the Church of Jesus Christ is that we center in on one single person, and that we always, always stay focused. That it's not about the Church of the Nazarene, and it's not about Gracepointe in particular, and it's not about one single leader. In fact, I corrected somebody last night. They said to me, yeah, we go to somebody's church. I said, really? Every time I've heard that it referred to as that person's church. Do they own that church or what? I get myself in big trouble doing that kind of stuff. No. But he's been there for a lot of years and done so well. I think to myself, man, what happens if he ever leaves? You see, this whole thing is about Jesus. It always has been, and it always will be about Jesus Christ. And some like to have a false humility and get up and say, this isn't about me, and really it is all about them. But it isn't. It's about Jesus Christ. And the thing that we should always focus on, the thing that we should always center on, is Him. People may come and they may go. Leaders may come and they may go. But I want to tell you that Jesus Christ made a bold declaration and a bold statement, and He said, upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. It's always about Him. May we, as a body of Christ, always be about Jesus Christ.